The air in the rental house was thick with the smell of dust and cheap coffee. It was almost midnight. Michael, the cameraman, kept sighing, a quiet puff of air that said everything we were all feeling. We'd been at this scene for 3 hours. 3. "All right, Lena, from the top," David said. His voice was trying for encouraging, but it came out frayed, thin as old rope. "Just feel the anger. He betrayed you. He laughed at you. Use it." Lena nodded, her wide, social media perfect eyes blinking under the heat of the single key light. She was beautiful. No one could deny that. That's why she had 5 million followers and a role in this no-budget psychological thriller. It wasn't because she could act. Action. I was on my knees, like the script said. My character, Daniel, was supposed to be pleading with her. In reality, my knees were killing me from the hardwood floor, and I was just pleading with the universe for this night to end. You can't do this, Sarah," Lena said. The line came out flat, like she was reading a grocery list. She held the rubber prop knife like it was a dead fish. There was no anger. There was nothing. It was the 10th time she'd delivered it with the same empty cadence. I saw Michael lower the camera slightly, his shoulders slumping. David rubbed the bridge of his nose. A slow, painful motion. I just wanted to go home. I needed a drink. I needed to not be in this stuffy, borrowed house on a hill 1,000,000 miles from anywhere. Cut. David's voice cracked. He walked over to Lena, putting his hands on her shoulders. He was trying to be gentle, to coach the performance out of her. "Lena, honey, what's the block? Talk to me." She just shook her head, her lower lip trembling. "I'm sorry, David. I'm trying." I tuned them out. I had seen this 100 times. Young actors, full of ambition, but with no real craft. She was a kid who got famous for selfies, and now found herself in a room where she actually had to perform. I didn't feel sorry for her. I just felt tired. This was my career now. Once I had shared scenes with real actors. Now I was down on my knees for a girl who couldn't find an ounce of rage for a scene about betrayal and murder. So it goes. David gave her a final pat. "Okay, one more time. Let's just take a minute. Everyone breathe." Lena stood there in the middle of the fake living room set. She closed her eyes. Her whole body was still. Michael hoisted the camera back onto his shoulder. I got back into position on the floor, the dull ache in my knees returning immediately. I was ready for another lifeless take. But then she opened her eyes. And everything changed. It wasn't a gradual shift. It was like a switch had been flipped. The vacant, doe-eyed look was gone. Her eyes, they were dark, focused, and swimming with a kind of pain that felt older than she was. Her posture straightened. She wasn't a lost little girl anymore. She was something else. David, sensing the shift, just whispered, "Action." She took a step toward me. Her movements were no longer hesitant. They were deliberate, heavy. The air in the room got cold. I felt it on my skin. A real, physical drop in temperature. "You think I didn't know?" she whispered. The voice wasn't hers. It was raw, broken, scraped from the back of her throat. A tear slid down her cheek, catching the light. It wasn't a movie tear. It was real, messy. It left a trail on her makeup. "You think I'm stupid?" I was supposed to say my line. "Sarah, listen to me." but the words were stuck in my throat. My mouth was dry. Because the way she was looking at me, it wasn't her character Sarah looking at my character Daniel. That was Lena looking at Jake. And it wasn't anger in her eyes. It was pure, distilled hatred. I could feel it radiating off her, a palpable force. David and Michael were frozen behind the camera. I could hear the faint whir of the lens motor, the only sound in the room besides her ragged breathing. "All those nights," she continued, her voice trembling with a fury that felt terrifyingly authentic. "All those little lies. I collected them. I kept them. And now you'll pay for them." Each word was a punch. This wasn't in the script. Not like this. The dialogue was the same, but the delivery? It was like she was pulling the words from a real memory, a real festering wound. This wasn't acting. This was a confession, an exorcism. I saw David and Michael exchange a look out of the corner of my eye. Their expressions weren't worried. They were ecstatic. They thought they were capturing lightning in a bottle, a breakthrough performance. They didn't have to look into her eyes. She raised the prop knife. Her knuckles were white. The cheap piece of rubber suddenly looked menacing. She stalked toward me, her bare feet silent on the floorboards. "I loved you," she spat, the words dripping with venom. "And you threw it away. You threw me away." She was right in front of me now. I could smell her perfume mixed with the scent of salty tears. I could see the tiny capillaries in her eyes. I finally managed to choke out my line. "Sarah, stop!" She smiled. It was the ugliest smile I had ever seen. All teeth and no warmth. "Don't call me that," she hissed. And then it happened. Her hand tightened, and the tip of that rubber knife, which was supposed to be aimed at my chest, moved up. It trembled, pointing directly at my right eye. It was maybe 2 inches away. Just 2 inches. I saw nothing else. Not the lights, not the camera, not the room. Just her eyes, burning with that impossible hatred, and the black point of rubber that might well have been sharpened steel. A small movement, a flick of her wrist, and my life would be different, permanently. My body reacted before my brain did. A pure animal instinct for self-preservation. I threw myself backward, landing hard on my side with a grunt. The perfect shot was ruined. The magic was broken. A lamp wobbled on a side table. That was the only sound. Then Lena blinked. Once, twice. The fire in her eyes just went out. They were just a girl's eyes again, confused, frightened. The knife clattered from her hand onto the floor. "Oh my God," she whispered, covering her mouth. "Jake, I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. I got lost in the moment. Are you okay? I'm so sorry." She was rushing her words, her voice high and sweet again. The monster was gone. But I had seen it. For a fraction of a second, I had seen a genuine intent in her eyes. An intent to harm. It wasn't acting. You can't fake that. "We got it!" David yelled, practically jumping out of his skin. "Holy shit, Lena, we got it! That was incredible! That was fucking transcendent!" He rushed over and hugged her.
Michael gave a thumbs up from behind the camera, a wide, relieved grin on his face. They didn't see. They saw a brilliant performance. I saw something else entirely. David clapped me on the back as I got to my feet, my side throbbing. "You okay, man? That fall looked real." "Yeah," I mumbled, not looking at Lena. Just reflex. He wasn't listening. He was too busy replaying the scene in his head. A masterpiece. One take. We're done for the night, people. Wrap it up. A wave of relief washed over the tiny crew. Michael started breaking down the camera. David was still gushing to Lena, who was back to being the sweet, apologetic ingenue. She glanced over at me and gave a small, shy smile. It looked completely wrong on her. A mask that didn't quite fit. I tried to reason with myself. She's just a kid. She's insecure about her acting. She pushed too hard, went too deep into some method bullshit. That's all it was. It had to be. David and Michael left a few minutes later, their car crunching on the gravel driveway as they headed back down the hill. I told them I'd lock up, using the excuse that I needed a minute to gather my things. The truth was, I just didn't want to be near anyone. My hands were still shaking slightly. The house was quiet now. I went into the small room they used as a makeshift dressing area to grab my bag. The wall between it and Lena's room was paper thin. I could hear her moving around. Then I heard her start to speak. At first, I thought she was just going over her lines again, still buzzing from the scene. It was just a low murmur, a whisper. I paused, my hand on my jacket. Just being professional, I thought, running the scene in her head. But then, the whispers got clearer. The words became distinct. They were the same words from the scene, the ones fueled by that terrifying, cold rage. "You think I'm stupid?" she was murmuring to herself. "You think I don't know?" And then my blood ran cold. My breath hitched in my chest. Because the final line she whispered, over and over again, in that same broken hatred voice, wasn't from the script. "You'll have to pay, Jake. You'll have to pay for what you did to me, Jake." My body was ice.
I stood there in the narrow hallway, my hand still on the strap of my bag, unable to move. The sound from the other side of the wall wasn't a whisper anymore. It was a memory, replaying in the silence. "You'll have to pay, Jake. Not Daniel, not the character, me." My heart gave a hard, single thump against my ribs, a dull thud that seemed to echo in my ears. This wasn't some method acting exercise. This wasn't her staying in character. The character's name was Daniel. I fought the urge to just bolt, to leave my bag and my jacket and just run out into the night. It felt stupid, paranoid. She's a kid, I told myself. She's just messing with her own head to get the performance right. She's mixing things up, that's all. The knob on her door rattled. Before I could react, the door swung open. Lena stood there, framed in the doorway. She was wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans now, her makeup mostly wiped away. All traces of the enraged, weeping woman from the scene were gone. She looked young, normal. She saw me standing there, and a bright, almost dazzling smile spread across her face. It was the same smile from her Instagram photos, a professional smile. "Jake, you're still here?" she asked, her voice light and musical. It was a completely different instrument from the raw, guttural thing I'd heard moments before. I couldn't find any words. My throat was dry. I just nodded.
"Oh, I thought you'd left with David," she said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I just wanted to say thank you again, for the scene. You really helped me get there. I couldn't have done it without you." The shift was so total, so absolute, that it made me feel nauseous. My mind was scrambling to connect the two versions of her, the one whispering threats with my name on her lips, and this sweet, grateful girl standing in front of me. It didn't compute. I felt a disconnect, like I was watching a film with the audio badly out of sync. "It's fine," I managed to say. The words came out sounding like gravel. You did good work." "Really?" Her eyes lit up with a genuine-looking excitement. "Thanks. I was so nervous. David was he helped me find it." She wasn't lying, not in a way I could see. Her expression was open, her posture relaxed. Maybe I'd misheard. Maybe the thin walls and my own exhaustion had twisted the words. It had to be that. It was the only explanation that made any sense. "Well," I said, forcing a step back toward the main door, "I gotta go. Long night." "Okay, drive safe, Jake." She gave a little wave, that perfect smile still in place. I muttered something back and turned, walking quickly out of the house. The cool night air felt like a slap in the face. It was a welcome shock, clearing some of the fog from my head. The door clicked shut behind me. I didn't look back. The rental house was perched on the edge of a small, scrubby hill. The driveway was a short stretch of gravel leading to a small parking area carved out of the dirt. My old sedan was the only car there. Above, the sky was starless, a deep, hazy black that swallowed the light from the city below. The only illumination came from a single, buzzing security light mounted on a wooden pole. It flickered weakly, casting long, dancing shadows that made the familiar shape of my car look alien. The crunch of my shoes on the gravel was the only sound besides the electric hum and the distant chirping of crickets. The air was colder up here. I fumbled in my pocket for my keys, my fingers feeling clumsy and thick. The need to get in my car, lock the doors, and get down this hill was overwhelming. It was a physical urge, a tightness in my chest that wouldn't go away. Paranoid. You're being paranoid, Jake. She's a weird kid, that's all. You've worked with weirder. I pressed the button on my key fob. The car's lights flashed twice, a small, comforting blink in the oppressive dark. I walked toward it, my gaze fixed on the driver's side door. Something was wrong. I stopped about 10 feet away. The car was leaning, just slightly, but enough to be noticeable. It was tilted to the driver's side, like a tired animal slumping to the ground. A cold knot formed in my stomach, the kind of dread that comes before you've confirmed the bad news. Please, just be a slow leak. Please, just be a coincidence. I walked the rest of the way and crouched down. The front tire was completely, utterly flat. It sagged against the dirt, the rim almost touching the ground.
My hand went out instinctively to touch it, and then I saw it. It wasn't a puncture from a nail or a piece of glass. Running along the sidewall, clean and deep, was a long, straight slice. It gleamed faintly, a dark, wet line in the dusty rubber under the flickering security light. The cut was precise, deliberate. You couldn't do that by accident. You needed a very sharp knife and a steady hand. I stood up slowly. A wave of dizziness washed over me. My breath hitched. I took a step back from the car, my eyes scanning the darkness around me. The crickets suddenly seemed too loud. The wind rustling the dry bushes sounded like whispers. There was no one else here. David and Michael left together. The homeowner wasn't due back until morning. There were only 2 people left on this property tonight, me and her. I turned and looked back up the hill at the house. It was dark, except for a single window on the 2nd floor where I knew her dressing room was. As I watched, a shadow moved past the faint light. A silhouette, quick and fluid. It was there, and then it was gone. She knew. She was watching me. A frantic energy surged through me. Okay, don't panic, just call for a tow. Call an Uber. Get the hell out of here. I pulled my phone from my pocket, my thumb swiping clumsily at the screen. My hands were shaking. I brought up the keypad, ready to dial, and then I saw it. In the top left corner of the screen. No service. Of course, this place was a dead zone. David had complained about it all week. I had forgotten. I was stuck. Stuck on a dark, isolated hill with a useless car and a girl who whispered my name in her murder monologues. The rationalizations were all gone now, evaporated. There was no more explaining it away as method acting or a misunderstanding. This was real. The slashed tire was real. The shadow in the window was real. The feeling crawling up my spine, the one that told me I was being hunted, was very, very real. I stood there by my disabled car, feeling completely exposed. The flickering security light made me feel like I was on a stage. Every shadow was a hiding place. Every rustle of leaves was her approaching. I turned in a slow circle, scanning the dark perimeter of the parking area. The scrub brush was thick. Anyone could be hiding just feet away, and I'd never see them. My mind raced through the options. There weren't many. I could try to walk down the winding hill road in the dark, but it was miles to the main boulevard. And she would know. She would see me leave. She could just get in her own car and, what, follow me? Run me down? The thought was insane, but no more insane than anything else that had happened in the last hour. No, there was only one real option. As much as my every instinct screamed against it, I had to go back to the house. There had to be a landline. There was always a landline in these rental properties for emergencies. My feet felt like lead as I forced myself to turn away from the relative safety of the open parking area and walk back up the gravel drive. Each step was a conscious effort. Each crunch of gravel under my feet felt like a broadcast of my position. I kept my eyes locked on the house, half expecting her face to appear in a window. When I reached the front porch, my heart was hammering against my ribs. I reached for the doorknob, expecting it to be locked. I was already planning on how I would break a window if I had to. But the door wasn't locked. It pushed open with a soft click. It had been left ajar. I stepped inside. The house was dead quiet. The main living room, where we'd shot the scene, was filled with dark, hulking shapes of covered furniture. The only light came from the far end of the room. It was a pale, bluish glow, pulsing softly. She was sitting in an armchair with her back to me, facing the large picture window that looked out over the dark valley. The glow was coming from the phone in her hand. She sat perfectly still, a small silhouette against the faint city lights in the distance. It was like she had been waiting for me, like she knew I'd be back. I took a quiet step into the room. A floorboard creaked under my weight. She didn't startle. She didn't even turn around quickly. Slowly, she lowered the phone and turned her head. Her face was cast in shadow, but I could see the faint outline of a smile. Her voice, when she spoke, was as clear and sweet as a bell in the silent house. "Car trouble, Jake?" she asked. She paused. letting the question hang in the air between us. What a shame. The words hung in the quiet house, thin and sharp. Her smile was a pale curve in the gloom. I could feel my own heart beating, a frantic, uneven rhythm against my ribs. My mind was a blank slate, wiped clean of any reasonable explanation. I stammered, my voice sounding foreign in my own ears. My phone's dead. I was hoping there might be a landline for a tow truck. It was a lie, but it was the only one I could grab onto, the only thing that felt normal. She tilted her head, a slow, deliberate movement. The smile didn't falter. No landline. They took it out last year, too old-fashioned. She stood up from the armchair, a fluid motion that was unnervingly silent. I told you, I can give you a ride. As she moved, the blue light of her phone screen illuminated her face from below, casting strange shadows into the hollows of her cheeks. Her eyes looked like dark pools. She held the phone casually in one hand, thumb resting on the screen. And that's when I saw it. The screen wasn't locked. The background image was bright and clear. It was me, asleep in one of the canvas director's chairs on set earlier that afternoon. My head was lulled back, mouth slightly open. A completely unguarded moment. But it was the angle that made the blood in my veins turn to ice. It was taken from just a few feet away. Close, intimate, like someone standing over me, watching me sleep. She had been watching me. This wasn't a sudden impulse. This was planned. No, I said, the word coming out faster and harsher than I intended. No, thanks. I think there's a charger in my car. I'll just wait for it to get some juice. Maybe I can get a signal if I walk down the hill a bit. Lies. All of them. Stupid, clumsy lies. But my brain wasn't working on anything more complex. All it was doing was screaming a single, primal command. Get out. Get away from her. She didn't argue. She just watched me. That placid smile still fixed in place. Okay, Jake, if you're sure. The feeling of her eyes on my back as I turned was a physical weight. I didn't walk, not really. It was a controlled retreat, my hand fumbling behind me for the doorknob. My fingers closed around the cold metal, and I pulled the door open, stepping back out into the cold night air without ever once turning to look at her. I pulled the door shut, the click of the latch sounding like a gunshot in the heavy silence. I stood on the porch for a second, forcing myself to take a breath. It felt thin and useless in my burning lungs. Down the hill. I just had to get down the hill to the main road. I could flag someone down. It was a long shot, but it was better than staying here. I started walking, forcing my feet to move down the gravel driveway, away from the dark house. My shoes crunched loudly on the loose stones. Each step felt like a betrayal, announcing my location to the entire world. To her. I fumbled my phone out of my pocket, my thumb swiping at the dark screen, just in case. Just in case a bar of service miraculously appeared. The screen lit up. Still no service. Of course not. Then my phone vibrated. A hard, buzzing shock against my palm. I froze mid-step. My heart stopped. A message. It couldn't be. There was no service. But there it was.
A white banner across the top of my screen. A text from an unknown number. My thumb, shaking uncontrollably, tapped on the notification. The message was short. 6 words. Don't go. The scene isn't finished. My stomach dropped. I felt a wave of nausea that I had to brace myself against a small tree on the side of the drive. It was her. It had to be her. How? Wi-Fi. Did the house have Wi-Fi? But then, underneath the line of text, there was a small, compressed video file. It had already downloaded. I didn't want to watch it. Every instinct I had screamed at me to throw the phone into the bushes and just run. But I couldn't. I had to know. My thumb moved of its own accord, pressing play. The video was shaky, filmed on a phone. The view was from above, looking down through the large picture window of the living room, looking down at the very spot on the gravel driveway where I was standing right now. I could see the top of my own head in the frame. I was a puppet on a string, viewed from the puppet master's perch. Then a hand entered the frame from the right. Her hand.
In it, she was holding the prop knife from our scene, the dull, black rubber one. She brought it up to her face, up to her smiling lips. She placed a finger on her lips, the universal sign for shh. Then she slowly, deliberately winked at the camera, at me. The video ended. The phone slipped from my numb fingers, clattering onto the gravel. I didn't bother to pick it up. The last vestiges of rational thought, the last desperate hopes that this was a misunderstanding, a sick joke, all of it dissolved into pure, white-hot terror. I ran. There was no thought, no plan, only instinct. My legs pumped, my dress shoes slipping and sliding on the loose stones of the steep driveway. My lungs burned, sucking in the cold, thin air. All I could think about was the distance between me and the main road. Miles of dark, winding asphalt. Gravel spat from under my feet. My breath came in ragged, panicked gasps. And then I heard it. Another sound. A new rhythm joining my own frantic footfalls. The sound of someone else running on the gravel. Behind me. Fast. Unnaturally fast. It wasn't an echo. It was too clear, too distinct. She was coming. I didn't dare look back. I just pushed harder, my legs screaming in protest. The driveway ended, dumping me onto the cracked pavement of the narrow hill road. The darkness was deeper here, away from the house's security light. Trees closed in on either side, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching for me. The footsteps were closer now, so much closer. I could hear the slap of her sneakers on the pavement, a determined, relentless beat. It wasn't the sound of a chase. It was the sound of a predator closing in. I risked a single, fleeting glance over my shoulder. Lena was a silhouette against the faint glow from the hilltop house, maybe 50 feet behind me and gaining ground with an athlete's easy stride. Her hair was flying behind her, and in her right hand she was holding something. It caught a stray beam of moonlight filtering through the trees. It wasn't black rubber. It was steel. It gleamed, a cold, sharp silver line in the darkness. It was a kitchen knife, long and slender, real.
She must have gotten it from the butcher's block in the house. The sight broke something inside me. A dam of sheer animal fear burst, flooding every cell in my body. A strangled noise, half scream, half sob, tore from my throat. I veered off the road without thinking, plunging into the thick, dark woods that lined the asphalt. Branches whipped at my face, scratching my skin. The ground was uneven, covered in years of dead leaves that muffled my footsteps. I could still hear her right behind me, crashing through the undergrowth with no attempt at stealth. She was close, so close, I thought I could hear her breathing. A steady, unlabored sound that contrasted horribly with my own panicked, heaving gasps. My foot caught on something, a thick, exposed tree root hidden in the darkness. There was no time to react. My forward momentum was too great. I cried out as my ankle twisted violently. For a split second, I was airborne, my body weightless. Then I was falling, tumbling head over heels down a short, steep embankment in the pitch black, the world a spinning chaos of pain and snapping twigs. I landed hard. The impact shot up my leg, a white-hot explosion of pain centered in my ankle. A sound, a wet, guttural cry, was torn from my own throat. I was on my back in a heap of damp leaves and broken twigs, the metallic scent of crushed foliage and cold earth filling my nostrils. Above, the canopy of trees was a black lattice against a bruised purple sky. For a moment, there was nothing but the pain and the thumping of my own blood in my ears. I tried to push myself up. My ankle screamed in protest, a fresh wave of agony so intense it made my vision swim. I fell back, gasping. It felt wrong, twisted, broken maybe. I was trapped. Then a shadow blotted out the sliver of moonlight at the top of the embankment. She stood there, a silhouette, not breathing hard, not panicked, still. She didn't rush. The slowness of it was worse than the chase. She took a deliberate step down the incline, then another, her sneakers making soft, sure-footed sounds in the leaf litter. The frantic energy was gone from her, replaced by a calm that was 1,000 times more terrifying. It was the focus of a craftsman, of a surgeon. Her face came into the faint light, and it was placid.
Her eyes were fixed on me, not with rage, but with a kind of serene purpose. The kitchen knife was still in her hand, held loosely at her side, its steel blade a line of cold light in the gloom. She stopped a few feet away, standing over me. She had all the power. I was a broken animal in a ditch. There was nowhere to run, nowhere even to crawl. This was it, the end of the road. She tilted her head, a familiar gesture from rehearsal, but now it held a chilling finality. Her voice, when it came, was a whisper. Not a theatrical whisper from the script, but a soft, conversational tone, intimate. "This is the final take, Jake," she said, her voice as smooth as glass. "And this time, we'll get it in one." She raised the knife. The moonlight caught the full length of the blade, and in that polished steel, I saw a distorted, terrified sliver of my own face. My mind went blank. There was no thought, no plan, just a final biological command from a part of my brain that refused to die. My hand, shaking uncontrollably, shot into my jacket pocket. My fingers closed around the hard, rectangular shape of my phone. Adrenaline was a fire in my veins, eclipsing the pain for one single brilliant second. With a yell that was more of an animal grunt, I used every last ounce of strength I had and threw the phone. It wasn't a good throw. It was a desperate, panicked fling. But it was enough. The phone flew through the air and struck her squarely on the side of her head with a dull, solid thud. She cried out, a sharp noise of surprise and pain, not rage. Her head snapped back. Her serene focus was broken. She stumbled, her foot slipping on the loose, damp earth of the slope. Her arms flailed for balance. The knife flew from her grasp, tumbling end over end before landing with a soft thump in the leaves somewhere to my left. She didn't fall completely, but she slid down a few feet, catching herself on one hand. The opening. It was my only opening. I didn't think. I moved. I ignored the screaming protest from my ankle and began to crawl, dragging myself through the dirt and leaves. My good leg pushed while my hands clawed at the ground, pulling my body forward. Rocks and sticks dug into my palms. Pain was a constant, blinding roar. But the image of her getting to her feet, of her searching for that knife in the dark, was a more potent fuel. Up the embankment, towards the road. Each foot was an eternity of agony. I could hear her scrambling behind me, a rustling in the leaves. She was recovering. She was looking for the knife. I didn't look back. I just kept crawling, sobbing for breath, the taste of dirt and fear in my mouth. I reached the pavement, my scraped hands hitting the cold, cracked asphalt. I dragged my useless leg onto the road and kept going like a wounded insect. Then light. A pair of headlights swept around the curve in the road, painting the trees and the asphalt in a sudden, harsh white. The light washed over me, pinning me in its glare. I froze, blinking, blinded. The sound of an engine grew closer, slowing down. Behind me, I heard a sharp intake of breath, a frantic rustling. I twisted my head, just enough. The light from the car illuminated the edge of the woods. For a split second, I saw her face. No longer calm, but wide-eyed, startled, like an animal caught in a hunter's beam. Then she was gone, melting back into the impenetrable blackness of the trees as if she had never been there at all. The vehicle, a white security patrol SUV, crunched to a halt beside me. A door opened. "Jesus Christ, sir, are you okay?" The voice was normal, a normal, boring, beautiful voice. The world rushed back in, a dizzying wave of sirens and flashing lights that came later, of paramedics asking questions I couldn't answer, of a warm blanket being draped over my shivering shoulders. It was all a blur, a disjointed series of snapshots seen through a haze of shock and pain. The air in the police station was stale, thick with the smell of cheap coffee and disinfectant. I sat on a hard plastic chair in a small, windowless room, a disposable cup of lukewarm water untouched on the table in front of me. The shock had worn off, replaced by a deep, bone-aching exhaustion and a tremor in my hands I couldn't stop. I'd told them everything, every bizarre, insane detail. I watched the detectives' faces as I spoke, waiting for the flicker of disbelief, for them to dismiss me as a drunk or a lunatic.
But it never came. They just listened, their expressions grim. One of them, an older, tired-looking man named Detective Miller, re-entered the room. He didn't sit down. He just stood there for a moment, looking at me. His face was unreadable. "We ran her name," he said, his voice low and flat. Lena Collins. Except that's not her real name. It's an alias. Her real name is Catherine Dempsey. He placed a thin manila folder on the table between us. He didn't open it. She doesn't have much of a record. A few traffic violations. Nothing violent. But her name, her real name, was flagged in connection to an open case. An unsolved case from 3 years ago in Santa Monica. A cold feeling, entirely different from the fear in the woods, began to creep up my spine. It was a slow, intellectual horror. Miller finally sat down, his chair scraping against the linoleum. He leaned forward, his eyes locked on mine. Her boyfriend at the time, a man named Marcus Thorne. He was an actor too. Not famous, but working. He was found dead in his apartment. A single stab wound. It was ruled a probable suicide. He had a history of depression. A note was found. It was all very neat. Too neat for some of us. He paused, letting the words hang in the sterile air. I couldn't speak. I could barely breathe. There was just one thing that always bothered the original investigators, Miller continued, his voice dropping even lower. A piece of evidence found on the scene. The last thing he was apparently holding, according to the forensics. He finally nudged the folder toward me. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely open it. Inside were crime scene photos, reports. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't stop myself. My eyes scanned the typed words, paragraphs of jargon and observation, until Miller pointed a thick finger at a specific line in a supplementary report. Evidence tag 07B. 1. Bound screenplay, 112 pages, found in right hand of deceased. Beside it, the title of the script was listed. My blood turned to ice. My vision narrowed until the words were the only thing in the universe. The final take. I looked up at Miller, my mouth hanging open, a question I couldn't form dying on my lips. He understood. He gave a slow, weary shake of his head. She wasn't reenacting a tragedy, Mr. Grant, the detective said, his voice devoid of all emotion. He got up and left the room, closing the door softly behind him, leaving me alone with the open file, leaving me alone with the truth. She wasn't having a psychotic break. Her method wasn't some deep, dark emotional recall. She was just practicing. She was looking for a new co-star. On the table, next to the cup of water, was the copy of my script the police had retrieved from the set. The title, typed in bold black letters on the cover page, seemed to mock me. The final take.